It is all too easy to assume that everyone has the same assumption as we do. So I spent a long weekend looking through over 50 recent digital research reports and surveys on what companies are doing in the crisis and how they plan to move forward. Some answers I expected and others surprised me. Here are the highlights. The surveys were consistent, describing how companies were impacted by the pandemic, but the outlook from the companies varied greatly. No one experienced such a crisis before, and therefore they were all guessing what should happen next. Well, first and foremost, the good news is no one really has a better idea than you and I on what the future brings. Forecasting and strategy sessions give us the illusion that customer behavior and patterns will persist. What the surveys clearly show that the companies, even in the same industry, disagree on the path forward. The traditional playbooks for business have proved to be inadequate. And here are some things that stood out for me from the reports. Digital transformation accelerated. That's a no-brainer. There is a resounding consensus from all the surveys that companies accelerated their digital projects. One study suggested that up to 5 years of the typical project time was done in 2 months during the pandemic. Research also indicated that certain industries clearly drove the new digital speed, including healthcare, education, banking, and retail fulfillment. Across industries, sales and customer service processes were seeing the most digital adoption. Even digital laggard industries like manufacturing saw rapid change, like in the so-called lights-out factories, where there was already high automation level with limited human intervention. Even before COVID, US manufacturing had a 2.5 million labor shortage, and the crisis made that actually worse. These lights-out factories started expanding their back office and even the front office automation in the manufacturing business. There are other trends worth noting. Well, forecasting is out. Flexibility is in. Forecast accuracy dropped double digits at many companies. So if you cannot predict the future, then you'd better stay responsive to rapid changes in the present. Surveys pointed out that to stay agile, you need to constantly monitor customer responses and adjust the strategy on a monthly, weekly, or even daily basis. Some analysts suggest that it's best to assume that consensus opinion in the company is probably wrong. Finding weak signals, outliers, and unusual patterns is key to getting an edge to post-pandemic success. Cost cutters are losing the long game. That was a contrarian view. Every business continuity playbook calls for preserving cash in a recession. This was no usual recession though. Many sectors, especially tech, are thriving. So one part of the economy is massively expanding while others are hunkering down. Companies that keep investing expect breakout growth post-crisis. The same happened in every single crisis before, and afterwards the leaderboard of companies completely shifted. Historically, cost cutters would rarely catch up to those who expanded in recessions. And I believe it won't happen this time either, especially because many parts of the global economy are expanding and not shrinking. If your competitors are in Asia, they are expanding while you are shrinking and preserving cash. What do you think is coming next? The same is true domestically. Tech companies are constantly expanding to other sectors. What started in media now expands to healthcare and transportation. Tech companies are investing in those sectors. While many companies complain about tech disruption in their business, yet in times like this, when disruption is happening, when they should stay on the offensive, they don't. Surveys show a clear difference between digital laggards who cut back all discretionary spend and digital leaders who are selective in cost containment. Some reports showed laggards cut as much as 50% of their digital spend, while the digital leaders only cut back about 7%. And many companies actually expanded the investment. Remote work technologies were deployed at 80% of the digital leaders, but only about 50% of the business overall. Businesses with growth mindset reinvested 70% of the cost savings into improving customer experience or related technologies in online commerce and chatbots. Digital laggards tend not to reinvest cost savings in new projects, and they keep it into running ongoing operations. The digital laggards will not catch up on their own, as it is evidenced by the growing number of M&A and private equity buyouts targeting such companies that are falling behind. Digital transformation is on top of the CEO agenda. 80% of the CEOs in a survey stated that digital is now a top 5 initiative. Most companies prioritize customer-facing digital transformation over back office. CEOs expect a staggering 80% of digital transformations will be self-funding, and this is a massive shift compared to even a year ago, when most surveys suggested that only 20% of such initiatives produce tangible business value. One big difference, I believe, is the direct involvement of the CEO and the CFO in setting the targets and measuring results. Digital projects move from IT hobby to key business initiatives with 70% of the companies. And in those companies, they tend to be sponsored by business units. Also, more than half the companies in the survey were considering hiring a chief digital officer reporting to the CEO. Leaders use COVID to drive the transformation. It has become a cliche to say, don't let a good crisis go to waste. Surveys show that leading companies use the pandemic as an accelerator for their growth initiatives. All digital transformations are hard and fraught with change management challenges. In uncertain times, though, employees seem to be more willing to experiment and try new processes, and most of the old ones are not working. Change management is hardest when there's an opportunity to just stay with the status quo. As employees realized that uncertainty was here to stay, they were more open to transformational programs than before. Healthcare is a clear example of how it completely shifted to telehealth and online collaboration in an industry that used to be one of the slowest to adopt technologies like digital health. Education also moved rapidly, experimenting with various technologies from collaboration to automation. There was clearly no playbook for them. Now, manufacturing seems to be the laggard in the survey, at least in the US, which is troubling since the same sector is becoming rapidly digital in Asia, especially in China. So what are we learning from all of this? Surveys show that external disruptions are simply events. What makes companies leaders or laggards depends on the responses to the disruption. As one PE investor put it, the best companies are buying on a dip, so to speak, expanding investments in the crisis by reallocating cost savings to new investments. The decisions companies are making in their digital investments probably already separated the leaders from the laggards, and I believe the gap is expanding. Talk soon.